Hello, culinary connoisseurs of Culinary Corner. And we are back with another Culinary Corner short. What are we talking about in today's Culinary Corner short? The magic that is the power of steeping. Now what we have here is some very basic chicken drumsticks. And these drumsticks have been steeped in green tea. That's about it. Instead of water, I used organic green tea from that huge old bucket. Do you see there? I use that as my steeping liquid. Now, steeping is a very ancient art. Now, of course, if you're wondering what the stuff on top is, that's that. See if I can get a shot with it, not being all shaky because, you know, handy camming this. Rubbed sage from Monarch. So all I did was I poured in the tea, poured in the sage, dropped the chicken in there. It's been steeping for about 2 hours. That should be long enough for it to cook, which we can easily see if we take it out of here. So I'm going to grab a fork. Hold on. I didn't have my tripod ready and able at the moment, so I'm going to free cam this. Nor am I in my full chef attire. Now, why are we steeping, in case you're asking? Well, this is basically what a crock pot's all about. It's about steeping. You cook the food by basically boiling it in water for however long it takes to cook. I'm going to turn this off, unplug it so it's not draining electricity, throw my knife into my washer. But the big thing you have to keep in mind about steeping is it does change the flavor of whatever you're making. For me, it doesn't really matter since I have no sense of taste. I'm all about the texture and the look. If you really want to know why I don't have a sense of taste, you can ask me why I'm a cook but I have no sense of taste. Because I literally have no sense of taste, as in my taste buds do not work. But I do know how to make stuff. I have taken cooking classes. I know how to mix and match. And this is the basic same. It's basic same art if you were going to do deep frying. If you're going to make a giant pot and deep fry something, it's basically the same thing. It's just a slow cooking. But the crock pot is a slower process than deep frying, which is a much more quicker process because you're running things at a very high temperature. You're getting them to boiling and then you're dropping your food into it. While this, you're putting it in there when it's basically still cold and letting it getting a slower burn, getting the flavor to more seep in as opposed to the quick method. And whatever you're going to use as your base liquid is going to change the flavor of whatever you cook with. For me, it won't really matter, but this is something I want you all to know about. It's a technique I want you all to know about, because just like I use green tea, you usually would use water. Another method you could do for slow cooking might be to put it in a vat of milk. It all depends on what you're making, and that'll change the flavor. Now, depending on how you're doing it, if you're doing it deep frying, you typically won't taste the flavor difference. Deep frying tends to cook off the flavor of your cooking liquid, which tends to be good, but you'll still get a slight difference. If you were to do deep frying with, say, olive oil versus, say, canola oil, or butter, they're all going to faintly, well, obviously you need a ton of butter if you're going to do deep frying, but you get the idea. It's going to change the flavor, but very mildly, because the oil itself coats only the outside of the food, giving you that crispy texture. Deep, while this one, submersion technique, the technique that is slow cooking, they're sitting in the liquid for 2-3 hours, however long it's going to take for it to fully cook through. And you can see it's fully cooked through. And that's going to seep the flavor deeper into your material. In this case, it's chicken, so it seeps into the meat. You can also do it with vegetables. You can do it with anything you want. Of course, when you're deep frying or stewing, cooking like this, you don't want to mix your vegetables and your meats together. You want to do them separately. That's basic kitchen etiquette. You don't want to mix your meats and vegetables. Of course, always wash your hands thoroughly. I don't have to tell you all about those basics. But it's going to change your flavor. Now, For me, I'm not going to really notice a difference, but I want it to be something you guys can see, get a feel for, know about, and maybe try at home. So, yeah, try that. Just, all I did to make my tea was I showed you I used the tea bags, filled this thing with water, and put it in 3 tea bags. And then once it had seeped enough to change color like that, I left it in overnight, so about 11 hours I think it was. I use it as my base in here. As you can see, I still have plenty left over in my teapot. And I just threw my chicken in there. You can use black tea, you could use milk. Milk's going to add a more creamy taste. Again, depending on how long it's seeping in there, it's going to be how long it's going to seep into the flavor of your food. And of course, creamy flavors tend to work with different materials better. Like, I could see milk working better with more of... Well, that depends. It really depends on what you're going for. It could work with meats, it could work with vegetables. It's really, the key thing when you're doing culinary experimentation is you have to be ready to experiment and be ready and willing and able to accept the fact that it might not come out tasting all that good, and just mark that off on your mental checklist of, this was a failure. For me, I usually have to rely on other people to tell me something is good, because all I can go by is the mechanics of it. Like, dishes that I'm famous for are my pizzas and my desserts. I know how to make those because the ingredients to make a pizza is pretty simple. You just make bread, flatten it out, and then you put, cheese, tomato sauce, and whatever else you want on top of it. If you're making a dessert, a lot of sugar and a lot of chocolate, you can't really go wrong with that. You can't really screw it up. But for more nuanced flavors, like this will probably have a very nuanced flavor, I'll never know it. But if I were to make this in the future, like for my father when he was visiting, or a friend or whatever, they'd be able to tell me, and they usually do, because like I said, I've got actually culinary training, whether something's going to be good or not, and they'll say, this is actually pretty good, and I'll say, well, it was an experiment. But the thing to keep in mind if you want to start doing your own culinary stuff is don't be afraid to experiment, because you never know when you'll hit a masterpiece. Peace out.